How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the first ever Blue Tongue and whatever podcast. Don't have a good name. I'm Alex, and we got Manny with us. Manny is from Tiki's Geckos, and he's been working with reptiles and blue tongues for forever now, and we'll let him start that off right now.
Yeah, thanks you for having me, Alex. But I've been working with specifically blue tongues. I think I was trying to think of the exact year because I kind of tend to forget sometimes, but I think it was like around 2014 is kind of when I maybe 2015 when I started working with them. So we're starting to get around that 10-year mark. Specifically, just blue tongues. I've been working with reptiles and even like other stuff, small scale like fish. I used to breed birds like since I was even much younger, so like in high school and stuff. So I've been working with exotic animals for a very, very long time, probably most of my life now.
Now, probably I'll jump into a topic that a lot of people wanted me to ask about is your
Mhm.
breeding pits. How have they been working out so far?
So far it's good. I really tried to push making them around this time of the year just because even with like stuff like crested geckos, whenever you're pairing anything that's gonna live together, the best time of the year to do that is in the cooler months. You tend to avoid a lot of aggression when you do it when it's when the animal's metabolism is slower. So far it's been very good. I did about 16 trios. I only had issues with one male, and that is because he is a small male. And I kind of was, and the females, they're normal sized females. So they did bully him a little bit. I swapped them out for a bigger, more normal sized male, and they've been fine. So it's been going pretty well, except for that one hiccup. But it's just stuff I expected. Whenever you're, especially as you know, with northern blue tongue skinks, they can be a little feisty with each other. But so I've the pits themselves, they're about 6 feet long, about 3 feet wide, and about 2 feet tall. So they have a lot of space. And on top of that, I have some layering in there so they can, get in a platform above to bask better under it. I have a lot of hides everywhere, a lot of foliage, a lot of like branches and stuff where they can hide under some of those black gutter tubing. So if they want to be able, if they want to get away from each other, they can, which is also, I think, very important whenever cohabiting any animals.
And right here's this will pull up. There's a picture, and as you guys can see, he's got multiple different drainage pipes and a lot of substrate and climbing areas. So is that 2x12s on the sides then?
What sides? The y-
Basically, what you built the perimeter of them out of.
so the whole thing is I made them into 12-foot long pieces. So the back is 12 foot, the front is 12 foot long, the sides are 6 feet long, and I basically just made dividers in the middle. Um,
Well,
yeah,
that's
so
a smart way to do it. You got
it,
less
it's just
cutting that
easier.
way.
Yeah, it's easier to do it that way instead of cutting so many more pieces. Also, what you can't see in the picture is the bottom is wired. So because blue tongues can burrow and stuff, and I also always want to make sure nothing can get out. So the whole bottom is wired, um, and the tops are wired as well, but they're just lit so I can open them whenever I want. The bottom layer is actually rocks. So I kind of went with rocks because in Florida it does rain a lot, and specifically northerns, they can't tolerate the humidity very well, but you don't want them to be wet all the time. And then there's some spans that we have like rain 24/7 for 3, 4, 5 days in a row. So I did the whole bottom layer of rock just to help with the drainage, and then the upper layer is mulch, a deep layer of mulch, because as you know, Alex, blue tongues love to burrow, and they're
Yeah.
always in that mulch, and it also helps retain the heat in the cooler months as well.
So, have you had to make much adjustments then? I know you guys mentioned you were going to put plastic on the top. It's not super cold there yet. Any,
So far we've had a couple really cold nights. They handled it very well, but I wrapped them in just plastic painter's tape and kind of created like a greenhouse, and that's worked out fine. But I'm actually should be getting some it almost looks like plastic shutters. And so what that's going to do is going to cover the top, and same thing, almost create like a greenhouse. And also if it rains and it's cold, because that's when the cold is, can be a problem, but it's really a problem when it's cold and wet. So that's going to shield them from both. And then if it's a hot day, I could just take the plastic right off and, just be like just like how the enclosure is normally. And then when it's chilly or it's going to rain or anything like that, just pop them right back on.
yeah, I learned the hard way my first brumation. I had one female get a bacteria infection because she got too wet. I increased it to help her shed and
Mhm.
cold and wet. And
Yeah,
luckily she lived. She lost some
good.
toes and part of a foot, but
Yeah,
you
it's
learn
it's
the hard
that's
way.
a real dangerous combo, and especially in that time of year when they're brood mating, their immune systems are already lower, in that time anyway. So if yeah, anything like that can cause harm. So that's why, just you're just always gonna have to make adjustments whenever keeping any animals outdoors. These are not the first animals I keep outdoors. We keep basically anything we can keep outdoors, we keep it outdoors, and some of the stuff stays out there year long. But there's little micro habitats you have to create to make sure, one, that they're not going to be hurt in any way, and then two, so they can thrive.
Now, is there a certain temperature you guys have set to like kind of like the oh shit, we got to bring them in just in case?
um no, not for them. For the most part, they're going to stay outdoors all year round.
I mean, hopefully it doesn't
There,
get that cold.
yeah, we don't get too cold, and if we do, it's really just one night that it gets pretty cold. I know of people, Ron St. Pierre and Heather, they keep theirs in Central Florida outdoors all year round, and they've done very well. One of the tricks that they taught us that we've actually put in our enclosures is just a large bag of cypress mulch, and the mulch retains the heat very well. So sometimes I always see them either trying to get in it to just like wedge themselves in that warm mulch on those cold days and cold nights, or even on top of the bag of mulch, because again it just retains the heat very well throughout the night.
Now, this is kind of new for you guys, but have you noticed any pests or anything in any of the outdoor enclosures?
They tend to leave the reptiles alone. Never really had too many issues. Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head. No, because a lot of times, a lot of these predators are out during the nighttime, and most of the reptiles are are sleeping. They're not moving. They don't really have an odor to them. We get more issues with like our chickens and quail than anything else.
What about like insects or anything bothering some of the smaller stuff you guys keep?
We haven't had too many issues in this new place, but in our old place we had a bad ant problem. But
Yeah,
even the ants, they only tend to, well, from what I've seen, they've only really picked off like animals that already were kind of weak or showing signs of being weak. I don't know how they know, but I've had those issues in the past, and a good way to get rid of them is like make sure they're elevated,
yeah.
because that just makes it harder for them to get to. So all of our outdoor enclosures, except for like some of the boas and the blue tongues, they're all lifted off the ground a good amount. So we haven't had any of those issues with like swarms of ants, attacking an animal or anything. And I haven't had any issues with them, with the snakes, with the so far the blue tongues, the jewel lacerda, any of the iguanas that we have. Haven't had any issues with them.
Well, and those ones are a lot bigger too, that
Exactly.
not much is going to mess with them. And like you said before, you got it pretty well that you don't have to deal with like a fox or something trying to get it. They'll go for your chickens before anything else.
Exactly. They're not. They tend to leave everything else alone. They more care for the quail, the chickens, the ducks, stuff like that. But the reptiles, I've never had issues with them. The only real thing that I've heard of, and this hasn't happened to us, is like raccoons and stuff with turtles. But all of our turtles, we made lids that it's wired so nothing can get in. And it's not like we even keep that many turtles either. So we've never had issues with that.
So do you guys got a lot more room for more expansion outside, or?
Yeah. We still have room, even though it's filling up. I don't know, understand how fast it's been filling up, but yeah, we still have plenty of room to expand.
Would you say maybe twice as many outdoor blue tongue enclosures, or you haven't thought that far ahead?
The problem with like the blue tongues, like to doing more, which I have space to do more. I gotta be smart in where it's placed because half of the property is like shaded in trees, which I don't want for them. I want them that direct where I put them, they get a lot of direct sunlight.
Okay.
And in the enclosure itself, there's a lot of shade. So if it wants to be able to get away into shade, they can. But I'm kind of running out of space to put that like stuff that's going to be in like a lot of direct sunlight because we're going to do some other large outdoor enclosures eventually. So I kind of need to save space for that too.
Uh, Thinking more monitors, like you guys got the one water monitor, or you're not sure yet?
Um, that's that's the hope, but we it just depends on what happens with these Florida laws because
Yeah.
they can change, and then now you got to have your enclosure like this and like that with this and that. So it's really dependent on the Florida laws. I do want to build a large enclosure for the Cayman lizard, though. That I do, and that's probably going to be next: the Cayman lizard enclosure, and then the carpet pythons outdoor enclosures. So.
Now you guys just have the one Cayman lizard, right?
Yeah, just the one. He's a pet. Maybe, we'll eventually try to get a female, but that's a guy that we've raised since he was a baby, and he's just like a cool pet. He's one of my favorite lizards that we have. Period. Like he's such a cool lizard, and he used to be very friendly. He started. He actually got so it got really cold one night and they cannot tolerate the cold at all. So he had some issues passing some bowels, so we had to treat him. And ever since then, he hates me because I've had to like literally manhandle him to, do what I had to do. But we're working on our relationship right now. Hopefully, he'll be back to normal soon.
Well, they don't realize that your heart's in the right place. You gotta
Yeah,
forcibly give them antibiotics at times.
yeah, exactly. So he's just been feisty ever since, and he's indoors right now because of this weather. And again, he just hates me right now. But I'll win his trust back.
So, have you guys had any blowback from the hypo maruki with the northerns at all?
No, not at all. I mean, I don't really, besides like Instagram and stuff, I don't really post like on the Facebook groups anymore. So maybe there, but I feel like a lot of people have been much more open to it this past like year, 2 years than previously.
Yeah,
If there has been blowback, I have no idea about it.
I
So
haven't personally heard any, but that doesn't mean much.
yeah, exactly. So I'm not worried about it. Even if there is like, I'm not worried about it at all. I can't. What I want to do is make not just very healthy animals, but exceptional like pets as well. Like I want to make some of the coolest animals that we can make, and hopefully with that Maruki, I can put that into the Northerns and then make some really really cool animals with that, like adding that stuff to the reds, the whites, the Swedish, to everything, and just see what combinations work the best, what combinations make the most, stellar animals. And then maybe one day throwing that into some albinos or melanistics and see what that does. Ivories, you know.
I'm kind of surprised you didn't put that with an ivory.
The ivories are they're young. They're still gonna breed this year, but I didn't want to put anything out there that I wasn't 100% on the sex, because it would, I didn't want to mess up and accidentally put two males together and have them rip each other apart. So I'm basically just, going to breed them indoors in the racks this year, the ivories, and then once I know their exact sexes, then transition the following season outdoors.
You guys got time,
Yeah.
it's still a young, healthy animal. That's Hypo Maruki I got up right now. I don't know if you saw this picture from Menno. He had it labeled as a het skinkoides, but it's like a hybrid northern, maybe IJ.
No,
But
I don't think I've ever seen that animal before. Looks very
so
cool.
the visual form or the super forms, like the solid gold ones, kind of like Ron has,
Mm-hmm.
not the patternless, but the other ones.
Okay.
It kind of reminds me of your guys's a little bit. That's why I brought it up.
Mm. Yeah,
But
I would probably like to see more photos some other time of that animal, because it looks very, very cool. It's kind of hard to see because it's a little small, but it looks very, very, very cool.
yeah, there was another sibling, and I was checking today, and of course, sadly, he took him down, so he must have sold them to whoever.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I just thought they were some unique to see.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of cool stuff out there, especially in the Indonesians, man, with a lot of the imports. Like, if you ever talk to any of those people out there who live in New Guinea and stuff and sell, like, there's a lot of cool mutations going on out there with Marukis, IJs, Halmaheras, all of those.
I've been confronted by some, but they're usually random people that I don't know if I could always trust. It's like, oh, yeah, I found this random one, but you got to bid for it. It's like, I'm good.
Yeah, same. That's why I've never pulled the trigger on any of them. So, everything I have is usually from here or from some trusted breeders that I know in Europe or whatever.
Oh, and that's the way to do it, with people there. There's no way to try to get your money back. You're kind of, it's a gamble and it does pay off. People get cool shit.
Yeah, exactly. If you have, like, there's a lot of importers who have a lot of relationships out there with people that they can trust. So in that case, 100%. But I'm not gonna do that with a random person, like you said, that just messaged me off of Facebook or something. Like, they're like, "Hey, this is $4,000." Like, nah, I'll pass.
Sometimes it's a good price if it does
Yeah,
prove out, but
yeah,
yeah.
but even if it's a good price, like, it's just I don't know them, so I'm not gonna just send money to somebody I don't know, that if they're ever, let alone have the animal and then send it to me and then properly, because there's a lot that goes into importing and exporting. There's a lot, so I just that's why I've always just I ignored them when they messaged me.
So, with the market being a little shaky and the overall economy not being the best, are you guys planning on producing less next year? Or I know it's starting to get better now.
Hmm. So, sticking specifically with the skinks, yeah, if I could just be like, hey, I want to produce 100, I would kind of stick around that. But as you know, they're very unpredictable. You could breed 50 pairs and only 20 of them or 10 of them give babies. So I'm just gonna keep doing things as normal, breeding all the healthy females. Um, and just trying to produce what I can produce. And if I do produce too many, then I have a lot of we actually started doing a lot of wholesaling to businesses. So I always have that. So if there's too, and the market itself is not necessarily, it's definitely lower, because whatever the economy is not as good, that's going to slow down, because this is a luxury. Keeping animals, that stuff is a luxury. So, if the market is down, It's usually because of that. And with skinks in particular, I think the reason why, how do I explain this? The market is very good for pets. For pets, it's still very good because why? Because they're one of the best reptile pets you can get. Though where the market is struggling a lot is that let's say the classic pet northern blue tongue goes for 200 to 250 bucks. Anything like about 350 to like 700, 800, like that market is where it's really been suffering. Because for people to spend that money, they're not pet people most of the time. They're going to be people who want to breed.
Yeah.
And I think there's been a lot less people wanting to breed blue tongue skinks. I'm not sure exactly why. I think it's a multiple reasons, but that's why that market has been suffering. Now, animals that are exceptional still sell very well for good money, but it's all those in betweeners, which there was a lot of. And back in the day, just 4 or 5 years ago, there was a lot of animals selling for five, six, $700 who weren't nice animals. They looked like classics. They had good genetics, but then themselves weren't very pretty. So I think that's the market that's been, and we've been spoiled these last few years, man. I swear, like I would list a blue tongue and it would sell overnight. Like I could almost close my eyes and just put a price on it and it would. So I think the market's kind of like it's balancing itself a little bit. And also, as you know, we are not able to export them currently. So there was a huge demand for them in Hong Kong, Korea, just overseas. So they completely cut off that market. So there's a lot of demand right now. I mean, a lot of supply and not enough demand. And especially for those in betweeners. The last 2 years, 3 years, basically, I've been sending like 95% of my blue tongues overseas. And this
Well,
year we couldn't.
I think that's what a lot of people were doing. I know like Dave used to send a lot overseas, and I know Ron and other people did, and the last couple of years I sent some. Luckily, there's still a shot for next year. It's working with lawyers and crap. It might be a while.
Yeah, and that's kind of what was expected. I remember when everything was first before it went down, they're like, yeah, it's probably, the that's gonna happen, right? They're gonna go CITES, and then it's gonna take 2, 3 years to kind of figure out how to keep being able to export these animals. And that's, I think, exactly what's happening.
Well, and I thought I got maybe lucky getting approved for the CITES and stuff, but then they, now they want paperwork back to pre 1980, but I don't
Yeah, and
know if
how?
anyone's got that.
I'm sorry.
I don't know if anyone has that old of
Yeah,
paperwork for, 40 years ago that they imported an animal.
they don't, and that's a way to like tell you it's like, oh, okay, you can still do this, but at the same time, actually, pretty much effectively banning it because nobody really has that info. Like you're talking about what you said, 1980, so it's like 40 years ago. It's a
Yeah.
long time.
So with wanting to grow the market, I think more, future breeders would be helpful. What would you tell a new breeder starting out, say they have their first blue tongue and they
Mhm.
want to start breeding? What would be a good path to start their process?
First things first, don't overwhelm yourself. Because in the past, with skinks, with probably most reptiles that have boomed, people get one and they're like, I want to breed. Now, next thing you know, they have 15 or 20 before they've ever bred anything. I would say take it slow, and get stuff you like. Get stuff you like. That's very important. Many times people are like, oh, I'm getting this kind of animal because it's popular. Yeah, but if you don't love it, you're not gonna stick with it. So that would be my recommendation. Take it slow and get stuff that you like. If you're getting into them now, right now is a very good time because you can get some very, very nice animals for really low prices. Like I've sold some very nice animals for it's ridiculous for so cheap that I'm like, I get like it pains me to sell them for that price, but it's just how it is right now. But right now is a really good time if you want to get into breeding. If you have the money, it's a very good time. You can get some very nice animals for very cheap.
So with the slow growth, then would you tell them, maybe 4 to 6 animals starting with?
Yeah, if that's what you want, you can start with just one pair. It's more than good enough start. Get your feet wet, learn how they breed. These guys aren't they're easy to breed, but they can be very, very rough with each other. So, it's not for everyone. It's not for the faint of heart. Like I've seen animals get beat up pretty good just from breeding. So just, one pair, two, whatever you can handle. Just start with a small amount, get stuff you like, and just kind of go from there. Grow gradually. Don't get a million animals at once, and the next thing you know, you're overwhelmed, and then next thing you're gonna do is just try to sell everything that you have, and then it's like hard to sell the amount that you want to sell. And then a lot of times, if you do it like that, you're not even gonna get back on the animals that you put into it.
Yeah, I noticed it's kind of hard to find that nice happy medium. We grew pretty slow and kind of jumped, but even now we're still moving, some proven animals to try to make room for certain stuff. And then, like you said, some animals we got that they're nice animals and they were good price, but not every good deal is a good deal.
Yeah, and I'm at the same point right now because we have so many. Trying to move a lot of breeders, and kind of getting away from like stuff like the classics. Like a lot of classics I had was kind of to for that more like that overseas demand, So I'm kind of I'm trying to reduce. I have been reducing the collection. I don't know how I end up with more sometimes, but that's what I want to do. And it's funny having as many skinks as I have. I did count. I think it was it was definitely over 100, maybe like 120 adult northerns. And it's hard for me to part ways with some of these animals. I'm like, wait, I really like this one. I could use it in this project. I like this one. I could use it in this project, but I have to keep, to make space for the new stuff. Like there's a lot of stuff I want to focus on more on, especially if the hypomarukis starts producing some of the ivories. I need to hold back some ivories, so because there's a lot of projects I kind of want to play with it to see how that works. The hypocalicos, so there's a lot of stuff I'm gonna want to be holding back, and I need to make room for.
That's where I am on some stuff, and probably I'm guessing on your hypo Maruki if you're going to hold back all the babies. At least I would.
Yeah, exactly. Like if anything he produces, I'm gonna hold back. And it's kind of the same thing. Depends on how many babies hopefully I have. The hypocalicos, same thing. I think that's actually probably the thing I'm excited the most about are the hypocalico northerns. Just because I've seen how it works with some of the other mutations or some of the other colors, and that's something that I'm really, really excited about. More honestly, more than the hypomaruki, more than the reds, more than anything else, really.
Just to try to produce the more better quality color with them, or the more.
So when I started getting excited about them is I purchased some of them from my friend in Canada, Patrick, and he also sent me some outcrosses. And when I saw the outcrosses, I was like, okay, I'm starting to get really excited by them because I have both the parents that made the babies that I have, and what it does to the color, it like really brightens it up. It's a different color. It's weird to explain. I would almost have to like have you here and show you. It brightens up the color and it makes it like a spectacular animal. And I'm like, yo, I can't. I gotta do this stuff to red, see what that does. I have it to some white stuff. I need to make more hypocalicos. So it, I almost I don't want to say it's like it seemed like, because I haven't done enough work with it. But it almost like the way I would describe it is like an Enchi in ball pythons. Almost makes the color even better, even brighter. So from the little that I've seen, that's what it might do, and that's why I'm really really excited about it, especially when you like when you get into the Swedish, the reds. Oh, if you can get those colors even brighter, and not just brighter, but hold the color,
Yeah.
because I have noticed in a lot of these very bright animals, they don't hold the color the best. And that's actually one reason why my favorite right now to work with is the Swedish. 'Cause it's like a deeper coloration, and that retains it way better over years than like some of the brighter animals like sunrise and some of those do.
Well, and some of that is probably, some line breeding and luck, but it definitely could be something even more genetic, like you said, Enshi, which, yeah, getting better adults, everyone's going to like that.
Yeah, exactly. So I really need to, if all those babies, I'm gonna basically hold the pack too, just not just for me to have to work with, but I also want to understand how that gene is working. So for that, I would have to raise a lot of babies to see how their colors change, how they progress, and how they mature.
Well, then you know for sure if it's just something more like just random luck or something genetic or, just good polygenics that carry
Mhm.
on well.
Yep, exactly. And one of the you might have seen in some of my posts. One of the cool things about the hypocalicals too is their eyes. Their eyes are a lot lighter than normal blue tongues. I've had those lighter eyes with different lines of animals before, just kind of pop up, but theirs is like the lightest that I've seen from just like regular non-albino, melanistic, any of those mutations, northerns.
The pupil itself, or
Yeah, I gotta. I'll text you some photos because I don't have anything on my computer or anything like that. But I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's really cool. The not necessarily the what is it, the iris, but it's the pupil itself is like light. It's very light. It's weird, even in the outcrossed animals.
yeah,
So that's it's
and
another
that might
that's
be
another
a
reason I'm
sign
excited for
for
that.
something,
Yeah,
with
I mean
the
we'll
B
see.
plus.
Yeah, only times will tell. Unfortunately, I haven't had luck for some reason reproducing them. Like they did come from Canada, so and they actually have a winter, which we don't. And sometimes it takes the animals a year, 2 years, 3 years to acclimate to their new like how the weather works. When how the intensity of the brumation, how cold it gets, how long it's cold for. Down where I am, I swear they probably brumate like 2 weeks. Like that's all I can get because it's so hot down here. Um, and so they've bred for me, but they haven't produced anything yet. But hopefully this year, I threw a lot of them outside. I kept some indoors as well, just in the racks. But and then I also brought some in from the guy who originally had them in Germany. So I have quite a few to work with, and hopefully I'll have some luck with them this year.
Do you think any of the skinks outside that move's gonna affect them that much this season?
Um, Definitely I'm expecting some because just whenever you move, period, like their stuff gets thrown off, and some might take it, like I said, a year to acclimate, 2 years. I'm definitely expecting that. But at the end of the day, I just don't, I'm not gonna I don't know. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how it because it's only going even from us moving from where we were before to now, like the winter's a little bit longer. It gets a little bit colder earlier. Like just to give you an example, in our old place, my blue tongues used to start brumating around mid to late December, and then they would wake up January 1st, January 2nd, and they'll breed early January. No, I'm tripping. They will start breeding sometimes as early as late December. Now last year, mine didn't even wake up until late January.
It is a big
And they didn't start breeding until late January, early February, which is really weird because for me, the past 3 years before that, 4 years, everything's been starting to breed late December to early January.
See, time wise for my move, everything is the same, but I moved 2 miles, but going from overhead light in the new racks, those females didn't do the best last year at all. Like 70% of those reabsorbed.
Mm-hmm.
Like I did 38 females and produced the same amount as 18 females.
Yep. That's something I've noticed with this species is like just having more doesn't necessarily you're going to produce more. Last year, I think I paired like almost 50 females and I didn't even produce 100 blue tongues. In the 2 years before, I bred like 40 females and I produced almost, I think the most I ever did was just over 200. But, you know, like I did more last year and produced maybe 70.
Now, I have trouble with this one. When do you give up on an unproductive female?
Um, man, I usually give her at least 2 to 3 seasons. It also depends on if I need space. If I need space in 2 seasons, you haven't produced well or anything, you know, I'm gonna sell her. If I have the space and I like her, I'll give her um 3
Would you
seasons.
give her longer if you moved in those times?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If I moved, 100%, I'd give her longer because that could be what affected her that year. As you know, like some years for some reason a female will produce 20 babies, 15 babies, whatever it is. The next year produce well, and then like 3 years they don't produce much or anything at all. They're very weird. They're a very weird animal. I haven't been able to to lock it down all of their reproduction works, but I have had males that are the best breeders. They'll breed like if I gave them 10 females, they'll breed them all. And then 2 years later, they don't want a single female. It's so strange. They're such a strange. They're unlike any other reptile I've worked with. The crested geckos are easy. You literally just throw them together and they'll breed. A lot of the other animals we work with are pretty much like that. If you pair them up, they're gonna breed. With the blue tongues, it's very different. I like it though. It's a challenge.
Now, I know you guys keep pretty detailed records. You guys keep records on, like, say, how many babies a certain female did to compare?
Yes, so I do. I keep track of a couple different things. I keep track of how many babies she produced, how many of those were good, how many of those were stillborns, how many of those were slugs, and how many of those were weak babies. I also keep track of how long she, was potentially gravid for. I also keep track of the temperature, the hot spot. Um, so that, and then obviously the pairing. Um, yeah. So those are the things I mainly. There might be one or two other things I can't remember. I have it actually have it
Have
right
you
here.
noticed anything
Yeah.
that
Also, I keep
relates
track.
to certain things or not
A
yet?
what?
Like certain females are better in certain areas, maybe higher, lower, or this female reproduces better with overhead lighting, or haven't got that much into it.
I haven't done the overhead lighting just because I've always kept them in racks. This is going to be the first year that I have them. They're going to be outdoors. So I'm going to keep track of that. But I have noticed I used to keep my blue tongues probably like around like 95-degree hotspot when I first started.
Yep.
And then I remember talking to a couple of the Australian guys, and I bumped it up to like about 105, and I've noticed better production. Also, their gestation is a bit shorter. So normally where I would have females give like 120, 125 days, they started doing that in 105, 110 days. So I've definitely noticed that. But there's also some females that, man, I swear, like this one female every year, she holds it for like 130 days, no matter what the temperature is, you know? But I
And
did notice for the most part that the temperature, they produced a little bit more for me, and their gestation was a little bit quicker. Now the babies came out fine. It was not like I noticed more slugs, more stillborns, or anything like that. So I've kept it at about that 105 degree hotspot now.
and what about the size of the baby? Still about the same at both temperatures?
I haven't noticed any significant difference in the size of the babies. I notice more the size of the babies depends on how big the litter is and how big the female is also. Because the smaller females, I have some that are quite small. They'll produce small litters, but their babies are smaller than the normal size females.
See, what's weird on that, and I don't have a huge sample size or a long-term sample size of testing, but I've had some younger females do like 13 babies and they're all like perfect size, like, which doesn't make sense. At first everyone tells you if they're under 2 years old, the babies are going to be, mutants and, not work out.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wait a little bit more now for the females. Before I used to breed them at a year old, and a lot of times they did fine. The reason I kind of stopped that is again, it's more for longevity. But again, it's just a theory. It's not because I haven't, it's not like I had an animal or a group of animals for 20 years and been breeding them for 20 years. I haven't been doing it that long. So it's just kind of, I tend to grow them a little slower, hoping that they'll have a longer productive lifespan. And, so, but again, that's just a theory. That's not nothing I really have evidence for because most of mine are not that old. Like some of my oldest stuff is like getting towards 10 years old, So it's not enough of a sample size for me to really come up with that conclusion. But I've done it in the past. They do fine bringing them at a year, especially if they get big enough. They do fine. What I notice is more important is if it's overweight. That when the leaner females I have produce better than the fat females I have. So that is something I've noticed though.
Well, and those younger ones were, on the leaner side versus, that 5-year-old female that's, 2,000 grams and can't move. But
Jeez.
those ones can't breed the best anyway. So with mutations growing in your eyes, would you rather have a pure northern mutation, a northern eastern mutation, or really at this point, as long as it's healthy and breeds easy, it doesn't matter?
Yeah, so me being me, I would like to have them all.
Yeah.
I'm like I loved Pokemon as a kid and I just gotta catch them all. But I I don't really like hybrids don't bother me. They never really have. As long as like you're honest with it. I was never the type to be like, this is a pure northern when it's not. I've always been very honest, like, hey, this is a this and that. Or, so to me, the hybrids don't bother me. And I would like to work with all those mutations, and I would like to outcross some of those mutations, like the Maruki, into the Northerns because I just like Northerns more personally. I like their personality. I like their size. I like how hardy they are. I like that they don't need some of these Indo species such a high humidity, and I think they make for that reason they make a better pet than some of these Indonesian species. Not all of them, just some of them. So I'm gonna work with what I like, and then whether I don't care if this animal's an Eastern Northern cross or a Maruki Northern cross. Like it doesn't bother me as long as, and I'm always gonna market it as this is what this is.
Well, that is the main thing, to label it how it is. And realistically, a lot of the albinos already here, and some of the hypers are already, intergrades with northerns and easterns. So you can't make it pure from that standpoint.
Yeah, exactly. And they're even with them, they're the same species. It's just different subspecies. But man, I had some I never I've had some albinos, and I could see that you can kind of see the difference between some of these crosses um versus because I've had a pure eastern albino and I've had the northern albino eastern cross. And the crosses tend to be bigger animals. They're more vigorous. They're I those are the ones I actually almost bred. I was very close. For those who don't know, albino having male visuals is not the best way to go for blue tongue skinks. It's not like ball pythons where, hey, let me get one male visual albino and then I'll throw it to all these het females and we're gonna make $1,000,000. Like, nah. For blue tongues, man. And this is something I noticed on the groups. Nobody told me this. This is something I noticed from the Australian groups. They'd always post a het male to a visual female, and I always wondered why. But here we have the mentality like that ball python mentality. Just get the visual male. Visual males are hard to breed because blue tongues to breed, the male's got to be aggressive. He's got to grab the female, toss her around to be able to breed her. Albinos are visually impaired animals. They don't have the best vision, and as they get older, it gets worse and worse and worse. So that's why I struggled trying to breed those albinos. I almost got one bred. Like he literally was right there, and his hemipenes came out a little bit early. And that was the closest I ever got to to getting one of those to breed. And then the melanistics just tend to be so lazy. The males, they just tend to like
Did,
not care.
did the melanistics you have the eye issues or no?
Yeah. So the one I had the eye issue. Yep. So I was treating it whenever the any of my skinks is a good tip for whoever has skinks with eye issues. Terramycin is a really good antibiotic. It's just an ointment. You just squeeze it a little bit on the eye, and it'll eventually rub itself in. And then also adding like blueberries and carrots to the diet really help. So when I had it, it did have the eye thing, but it kind of went away. And it wasn't mine. It belonged to a friend. He gave it to me on loan to try to breed it. And I think it did come back after I gave it back. So I was like, listen, like this animal's not going to breed. He's an old melanistic male. He's like 10 years old. He's lazy as heck. Let's just take him back.
So I actually talked to Roger from Australia on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's genetic link to the pure ones. And once you outcross it, it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the same thing yours had, so it might have just still
It
been there.
looked like kind of what is it called? I don't know why the name is escaping me. Kind of the dogs when they start getting old, they start getting the eye problem. It's like the
Cataracts.
yeah, cataracts. It was more like I don't know if that's the same thing you're talking
Yeah.
about. It is okay. So that did help it, but like like I think it got it again after I stopped taking care of it because it would like come and go. It was weird. It wouldn't just be there 24/7. It would kind of come and go. It was really strange. And I've had that actually with one of my northerns before. But like I said, I kind of did the terramycin. I actually got that tip from Austin with the carrots and blueberries. And
Yeah.
haven't really had issues with that ever since.
Well, hopefully just outcross them and it stays away like Roger says, and that
Mhm.
will make the problem so much easier for us.
Yeah. Do you think that's why they're crappy breeders, the melanistic males, because of that? I just was always told that they're just lazy. They're just
It
lazy breeders.
it does seem to affect their vision.
Hmm.
So if you can't see well, I mean, it's kind of hard to hump good.
But I've seen young animals who don't have that. That's why I'm wondering. Like I've seen young melanistics that don't have that. At least not yet. That didn't have that yet.
Yeah, that one I'm not sure.
Hmm.
I have some hets that I got that are older that I don't know what we'll see what happens if I'm able to get them to go. But
Do they have the cataracts too?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not horrible,
Hmm.
but gonna wait and see and hope he's vigorous enough to get the job done.
Yeah. I mean, if
And
anything, worst case, just get the female bred by, another male. If he
yeah,
doesn't, and then you'll have pos heads, and if you keep all of those and you pair those together, you're, bound to pair up a head to a head.
yeah, and that's probably what I'll end up doing. Out crossing them, and
Hmm.
who knows how inbred they are in the first place.
Yeah.
Some of those breeders want to whip them out quicker to get the quicker return on investment. Right. Um, so do you think then most breeders are going to move to that, have separate pure groups and hybrid groups, or integrate groups?
I think there's always gonna be people who have their own niches. There's always gonna be the purists. You're always gonna have that. And then you're always gonna have people like who are just gonna want to make basically like at the front of the line of creating some of the most visually stunning animals you can, but at the same time while they're still being healthy. I do both. Like I have most of my Northerns are pure. Like I think I don't have any non-pure Northern. I'm trying to make some right now
Yeah.
with the Marukis, but everything else is pure. So I don't think it's gonna be a problem. But like in anything, like carpet pythons, one of the most notoriously like crossed animals. There's still a market for pure animals, but there's also a market for those crazy bright like gamma line animals who are just crosses of a bunch of different subspecies species. So, and in my opinion, they're both incredible. You know.
And for the most part, most of those turn out great, healthy animals. Some of the supers have issues, but that's a different problem.
Yeah, exactly.
So, besides blue tongues, Manny, what would you say your next favorite reptile is besides them and like caiman lizards?
Oh, my favorite reptile? I wouldn't
Yeah,
even put. I love the blue tongues to death, but I wouldn't even put them as my favorite reptile because that's something I get the most excited to work with, though, for sure. Like, because I think it's almost like there's a lot of potential in them when it comes to the what you can produce in color and patterns. But it's funny. I have like a list for like everything. I have my favorite like pet reptile. I have my favorite what I like to breed reptile. I have my favorite, stuff like that. But my favorite reptile right now, besides the caiman lizard, the monitors, it was the tegus. When I had them, man, they were my favorite. If I had to get rid of everything and I only could keep one thing, it'd be those tegus. They were amazing. It was like a dog.
yeah.
It was my favorite. That's why it just hurt so much when we had to get rid of them. But those guys, just I like the really really smart animals. The tegus, the monitors, man, they're different because they look back at you. Blue tongues are kind of dumb, you know.
Yeah, especially
They're not
some
the
more
brightest,
first.
and it's different when you start working with animals like that. I would say the monitors, the caiman lizards, just anything smart. I'm really getting into the tokay geckos right now. I'm starting to get more and more. It's just another like really smart gecko, man. I've never seen. It's got to be the smartest gecko in the world. It's super cool to work with, and tons of crazy mutations in them. So that's those. I would say like the monitors and the tokays probably my favorite things right now, and the caiman lizard.
Now, you guys don't have any tree monitors, do you?
No tree monitors. Just even we have two Asian water monitors. They're just pets.
Yeah,
We're not looking to breed them. Not really looking to breed monitors just because we know they're gonna come down on them eventually here in Florida. They're gonna be next. It's gonna be the monitors. And then probably the big snakes, like some of the boas, maybe red tail boas, stuff like that. So kind of not trying to get any more of those until, because I don't want to have another situation where you spent $10,000 on these crazy iguanas and tegus, and then you have to give them away. And then you build a relationship with them. Like, these are pets. Like, I don't care if I've never got to breed a tegu again. That thing was my pet. That was my little reptile dog. So I'm not really trying to get. I love the green trees. I'm not trying to get them. I'm not trying to get any really monitor right now.
Well, where you live, it makes sense, sadly, and not
Yeah,
all of them make the best pets from a breeding standpoint. Not everyone can house a water monitor.
right. Yeah, exactly. That's a big commitment, man. They get really big. Like, ours are probably now like 4 feet, and they're just, and that it doesn't sound that big, but they're big. So yeah, not everyone can have something like that. That's why I recommend crested geckos and blue tongue skinks, man. I think those are pretty much the best beginner pets you can have. If you want something a little bigger, blue tongue. If you want something a little smaller, you know, crested gecko. Like, those are some of the best, and those are the stuff we mainly work with, and one of the reasons why we mainly work with them, because we think they're so great.
Well, and you guys do have amazing variety of, all the geckos.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
leeches are a nice sized animal that's, good medium size, but could be a good pet too.
Yep, 100%. They're the same care as a crested gecko. They're just a lot bigger. They can be, especially when you get the grand tears, the GTs, it can be cage aggressive. But for the most part, once you get them out, man, they're great. Um, but I don't think any of those New Caledonian geckos. The only one that could really compete, in my opinion, is the gargoyle gecko with the crested gecko. Other than that, the the crested geckos are king of New Caledonia, in my opinion.
Well, and they got all the morphs, so that probably helps drive the popularity. Where you guys got a couple potential ones cooking for the gargoyles, but you
Yeah.
don't have the T plus leechies, do you?
No, we do not. I know of, like, I think Leap and Lychees, and another a good friend of mine from New Jersey. I think they have one. I've seen some other ones out there. It's a lot of this stuff I know is potential albinos. I think, yeah, those are very cool, and I would be really excited to see when those get into like the high pattern animals. Some of those crosses. Oof. There's so much you can do out here with all these reptiles, man. That's what gets me so excited. It's what I love to do. I love to be able to create like amazing looking animals.
Well, and you get to share with everyone too, from
Yeah.
sh- sharing the animals themselves to the YouTube and everything else you guys got putting out.
Yeah.
So, so we're almost to the hour mark. To kind of wrap it up, how can we continue to grow the blue tongue community?
Um, just education. It's the best way, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, any of those social medias, whether it's at your local show, or just, educate people on how cool and how amazing these animals are. That I think is the key. Because once more people start getting, start looking up at these, they're going to be like, oh, wow, there's this color, that color, this color. They're going to want this. And eventually that's going to inspire some people to breed them. And, so I think just education is the best. That's what we try to do a lot, whether it's on YouTube, on any of our social medias. We've even done some kids shows, some to educate them about these animals. We just did a fish show, and there are a lot of these. I actually brought a lot of animals to hold, including blue tongues, and that was one of the most popular animals there. A lot of those people never held a blue tongue before, never didn't even know what it was. They never held the lizard before, because they're fish. They're more into fish, and they just blew their minds with how cool and how tame the blue tongue skinks can be, and how great of a pet they can be.
Well, and that's really smart, jumping from fish to reptiles isn't that far, it's
Exactly. If you like fish, you're most likely also gonna like reptiles. And then, like I said, same thing with the kids. Start, start education with kids and stuff. So that's the best way, not just to help the blue tongue skin community and the market, but like everything else. Just education is the most important thing we can give to people.
Well, and yeah, especially the kids, I think.
Yeah, they're the future.
Yeah.
100%.
They'll eventually grow up, and even if mom doesn't let them get that pet, they'll get their own apartment, or hopefully not sneaking in and you're mad. But
I've snuck in animals too back in the day. So, but yeah, definitely you got to do things right. But yeah, that's the best thing we can do, man. So,
well,
and that's honestly one of the reasons I think the Blue Tongues blew up so hard when they did a few years ago, because of Brian Barczyk. How he was showing off all these Blue Tongues from Australia when all these mutations were coming out. So it got me into them.
yeah.
So we just got to keep doing more of that.
Well, Manny, thank you for being on the first podcast and sharing an hour with me. Tell us where we could reach you, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Alex. I'm honored to be your first guest. We've known each other for a long time. I feel like we've barely ever spoke or like on the phone or anything, but we're always texting back and forth. But if you guys want to reach us, everything is Tiki's Geckos with an S at the end. Tikisgeckos.com is our website. Social. We have all the social media platforms: Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Everything's the same name: Tiki Geckos, one word. Tiki's Geckos, one word. And if you need anything, you could always. We have our office phone. All that information's out there. So definitely check it out, man. If anyone needs anything, I'll be personally more than happy to help you with all your blue tongue skin questions.
And it's Tiki's Geckos for your guys' OnlyFans too, or no?
That's next. That's next. That's the
That's
one we're
next.
missing.
Well, you got to diversify,
I know you're gonna see me in the pits with the skinks and stuff again, just like the photo you have. That's all it's gonna be.
Well, someone might like it. You never know.
I'm sure. I'm sure there's some freak out there who's gonna like that.
All right. Well, you all have a great night, and we'll see you on the next one.